What's this train all about? Oh, gross.
Hello my fellow enthusiasts, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about the battle train. Now for those of you who do not know, the battle train is an interesting location within the land of Vu that is basically a continuous network of carts pulling each other around in a continuous circle infinitely. As far as we know, there is no engine or a way to stop the carts, aside from possibly just destroying it in its entirety. Pretty much every single cart has an infinity symbol on them, most likely to symbolize the continuous loop that pretty much everyone within, as well as the cart itself, is continuously going through. The battle train in its entirety is basically an infinite dungeon, so to speak. Every single monster that is within it will continuously respawn without end. Interestingly enough though, these monsters that are continuously spawned seem to have some semblance of intelligence as well as individuality, as we see with the hare ape who left the train temporarily in order to basically get a breath of fresh air. With that being said, we're not entirely sure whether or not they're capable of actually leaving the train permanently, or if they're even capable of resisting the urge to fight adventurers indefinitely. It's possible that this is just a part of their instinct that was built into them, as well as the fact that they're just intelligent enough to actually think about it, but at the same time, I don't think they can resist it forever, but that's just headcanon. Though there is an infinite number of monsters that can be fought within the train due to respawning, there is a limit in terms of variety. Something that we know is a problem simply due to the fact that Jake was continuously complaining that they were fighting the same monsters over and over. Interestingly enough, pretty much every single monster that is within the train seems to be made out of some kind of material to make up its entire body. Hare apes were made entirely out of hair, and crystal ants were made entirely out of crystals. You get the gist. Granted, there are a couple of exceptions, but as you would imagine, the vast majority of the monsters within the train have a tendency to follow this trend. With that being said, the only entities that are purely unique within the dungeon are the bosses, which are not produced by the dungeon at all. Every single boss that is within the dungeon is actually a real-life individual that will not respawn upon their defeat. They are adventurers who rose to the top within the dungeon by defeating everything else until they eventually are also defeated, and the person who defeated them becomes the new boss. In fact, for a little while, Finn became the main boss of the dungeon. Considering that these guys are basically the strongest entities within the dungeon, as you would imagine, they are absolutely decked out with magic items, so let's go ahead and talk about those. The dungeon seems to be capable of producing both mundane as well as magical items entirely on its own, specifically things that the adventurer needs in order to stay within the dungeon. Basically anything that you would require to stay inside, such as food, water, ammo, magical items, additional weaponry, armor, basically anything that you need, the dungeon will provide. In fact, these items can even be taken outside of the dungeon itself, basically giving you an infinite supply of items assuming you're willing to fight for them. As you would imagine, considering there's basically an infinite supply of weapons, armor, and gear that you could ever want, aspiring adventurers would probably come here first thing. And as such, there is a continuous steady supply of new bosses that keep rising to power within the dungeon. Now, as for the dungeon itself, that's basically all there is to know. However, there is a couple of things I want to speculate as well as discuss in terms of the episode itself. First thing in terms of speculation is the items within the dungeon. I do not believe that it actually generates them, but instead takes them from other locations. The reason I believe this is that some of the weapons within the dungeon are flat out noted within the Enchiridion and are known to be outside of the dungeon prior. One in particular was the lightning sword, which was flat out noted to be unique and was purchasable outside of the dungeon when it was cataloged. This would explain the continuous supply of food, water, and various other basic necessities you need to survive within the train for such extended periods of time. Another, and particularly much darker theory, is that it's possible that every single individual who ends up getting killed here has all of their gear basically absorbed into the dungeon, and that's what drops from every single monster, which ultimately causes the rumor of additional treasure that can be claimed, which ultimately results in more deaths inside the train, which results in more gear that the train can use. My main issue with this theory is that in order for it to work, it would have to have so many people coming in and then dying that it would be able to sustain itself basically forever, which I honestly cannot imagine. However, at the bare minimum, we are sure that people are bringing in additional items, such in the case of the bosses. But anyway, that's all I got for this video. I was originally going to go over Finn's character development within this episode, but I personally think that deserves its own video. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye.